For centuries, the ocean kept silent a secret that seemed unreachable to any human hand. But one misty morning, as the sun rose over the restless waters of the Atlantic, a group of divers spotted something that wasn't part of the submerged landscape. At first, they believed it to be just another rock structure, a natural formation sculpted by time. However, as they drew closer, the shapes began to reveal right angles, broken columns, and carved symbols that none of them could identify.
Beneath the thick layer of coral and sediment lay the entrance to an ancient chamber, sealed so precisely that not even the pressure of the tides had been able to breach it. The team, comprised of archaeologists and explorers, soon realized that this wasn't just a lost structure. It was a tomb, and by all indications, it belonged to someone of unimaginable importance. The silence between them was broken only by the sound of diving equipment and rapid breathing.
One of the divers, experienced in archaeological expeditions, pointed to an inscription just above the entrance. He didn't recognize the language, but the wavy lines and geometric figures conveyed a sense of warning, almost as if trying to ward off anyone who dared cross that threshold. When they managed to open a small slit to peer inside, a stream of cooler water escaped, as if the chamber had remained untouched for thousands of years. Inside, shrouded in darkness, something gleamed. Upon surfacing, the group carried the news that they had found an intact tomb. But while the discovery caused euphoria among some, there was a palpable tension in the air. The expedition coordinator, a man accustomed to handling extraordinary finds, gazed at the horizon with an expression that mixed fascination and apprehension. After all, legends about Atlantis have always spoken of sunken temples, impossible artifacts, and secrets that should never be revealed. And that morning, what lay underwater seemed to fit perfectly into that narrative. Within hours, images of the site reached scientists on the surface. Preliminary analysis showed that the structure was preserved in an almost miraculous manner, protected by a sealing system made of stone and unknown metal alloys. This detail intrigued experts, as it indicated a level of technological knowledge far beyond that attributed to civilizations of known antiquity. At the center of all the speculation was the possibility that the tomb held the body of a legendary figure, a priestess of Atlantis, imprisoned in a sacred ritual, possibly for possessing forbidden knowledge. Her name appeared in no historical record, but the symbols and markings around the entrance suggested that her existence had been carefully erased, as if someone wanted the world to forget her forever. The question that echoed among everyone was inevitable. What kind of truth lay there, sealed in the depths? And why would someone have sacrificed so much to keep it hidden? Long before any map recorded the boundaries of the continents, long before empires like Rome or Egypt erected their monuments, there existed a civilization that most scholars still insist on calling myth: Atlantis. According to ancient accounts preserved only in fragments, it was a vast, wealthy, and technologically advanced kingdom, ruled by leaders who combined political power and spiritual knowledge. Its cities were said to be built in concentric circles, interconnected by canals, and that its temples gleamed with metals we can't even identify today. However, it wasn't just the structures that fascinated, it was the people. Among the Atlanteans, there was a special caste, formed by individuals trained from childhood to guard the civilization's greatest secrets, the priestesses. The oldest stories describe these women as guardians of knowledge that combined medicine, astronomy, alchemy, and spiritual rituals. Able to diagnose illnesses without instruments, predict celestial phenomena, and, according to some texts, delay aging, they were both revered and feared. The people saw them as intermediaries between the world of men and that of the gods, but this same power also made them targets of intrigue and persecution. When Atlantis faced its final crisis, a period of political instability and natural disasters, many believe that some of their knowledge was deliberately hidden to prevent it from falling into the wrong hands. What few mention is that not all priestesses lived to pass on their teachings. Some disappeared mysteriously, and others, according to fragments of records, were imprisoned in secret locations, not by external enemies, but by order of their own people. This detail, ignored by official history, raises a disturbing question. What could justify locking away such highly trusted guardians forever, far from everyone? Now, before the newly discovered tomb beneath the Atlantic, certain symbols carved into the stone seemed to echo these ancient narratives. Iconography experts compared the submerged images with inscriptions preserved on rare artifacts attributed to Atlantis. The pattern repeated itself, a female figure with a golden disc above her head, surrounded by spirals representing life cycles. Surrounding it, coded phrases warned of the gate of eternity and the oath of silence. The coincidence was too great to ignore. Archaeologists began to suspect that the submerged chamber was not just a tomb. It was a place of ritual confinement, built to isolate a priestess whose knowledge, if revealed, could forever change the course of humanity. The connection between the imprisoned figure and legends of immortality began to gain traction. What if, amid the ruins of a lost city, lay the body of someone who defied the most absolute limit of human existence? Death. The first foray into the tomb was carefully planned. Suction equipment removed centuries of sediment accumulated over the entrance, revealing a polished stone arch inlaid with metals that reflected the underwater light as if polished yesterday. The gate, made of solid blocks, seemed fitted together with a precision that defied conventional architectural knowledge. There was no mortar, yet the stones remained united, impenetrable to the advance of water and time. Upon touching the surface, the divers noticed a slight warmth, impossible to explain in an environment tens of meters deep. When they finally managed to open a small gap, the first sight was a narrow corridor, lined with walls covered in gold and silver symbols, some inlaid with crystal shards. Each inscription seemed to radiate a silent energy, as if it held something beyond mere decorative meaning. As the lantern's light scanned the shadows, tiny particles suspended in the water glittered like gold dust, creating the sensation that the group had crossed into a sacred space, where time moved differently. The floor was covered with slabs of black stone, smooth as glass. There were no signs of erosion or cracks, reinforcing the idea that this place was built with a knowledge of materials far ahead of any known civilization. The silence was absolute, interrupted only by the muffled sound of the divers' breathing. Even inside their suits, many reported a strange sensation, a mixture of awe and heaviness in their chests, as if an invisible presence were watching them. Continuing down the corridor, they reached a circular antechamber. In the center, an altar-like structure supported a translucent sphere, partially covered in slowly moving seaweed. Surrounding it were 4 female statues carved from white stone, each holding a different object: a chalice, a staff, a scroll, and an hourglass. Their faces, serene and enigmatic, seemed to guard the entrance to whatever lay beyond. It was then that they noticed the final door, a stone panel adorned with an intricate mosaic of gold and sapphires, depicting a scene no one there could fully decipher. In the center, a woman stood with her arms raised, surrounded by a luminous halo and figures kneeling in worship. Behind her, a structure that resembled both a temple and a machine, emitting rays that touched the sky. The chief archaeologist, observing the scene, commented quietly that the image seemed to represent not only power, but also a kind of transition, perhaps between life and something beyond. This door, unlike the previous ones, had no visible hinges or slots. It appeared to be a single block, as if it could only be opened from the inside. This discovery made it clear that, more than a tomb, this place had been built to keep someone, or something, imprisoned for all eternity. When the final door was reached, a beam of artificial light penetrated the chamber and revealed a sight that made the air seem heavier. In the center of the room, on a bed carved from a single piece of pale stone, lay the priestess's body. There was no coffin, only a crystal frame that enveloped the figure like a capsule, preserving it almost perfectly. The face, with fine, symmetrical features, resembled that of a woman who might have been 30, but subsequent analysis would indicate something impossible to accept. The body was thousands of years old. His hair, a deep black with bluish highlights, was arranged in fine braids, adorned with gold threads and small stones that reflected the light in soft tones. His skin, still intact, had a subtle sheen, almost as if it had been treated with some unknown substance. He wore a dark blue robe embroidered with silvery lines that formed spirals and symbols, identical to those engraved on the tomb's outer walls. On his chest rested a palm-sized golden disc with a crystal in the center that seemed to pulse slightly, as if reacting to the presence of the beholder. Her hands were positioned on her stomach, holding a small black metal cylinder with no visible inscriptions. But what intrigued the archaeologists most was what they saw as they approached. Thin, almost imperceptible markings ran from her wrists to her neck, as if they were drawings etched beneath the skin. Under ultraviolet light, intricate patterns resembling star maps were revealed, suggesting that this woman wasn't just carrying ornaments, she was carrying information. The position of the body, the extreme care taken in preserving it, and the symbolism of the surrounding objects indicated that this was no ordinary burial. This was not a death celebrated with mourning, but a ritual act. On the walls of the chamber, images showed the same woman at different times, leading groups of people, manipulating what appeared to be giant crystals, and participating in ceremonies alongside other similarly dressed figures. However, in the final scene, she appeared alone, surrounded by a kind of luminous arch, while other figures turned their faces away, as if moving away from her. Researchers began to formulate hypotheses. Perhaps she was a spiritual leader who had crossed forbidden boundaries. Perhaps she had attained a knowledge of life and death that made her dangerous to her own people. The fact that her body was so well preserved, in a state that defied any scientific explanation, only reinforced the idea that this woman held a secret that should not be revealed. Observing her, many felt something difficult to explain, not fear, but the strange sensation that this figure, motionless for millennia, was still conscious, waiting. The presence of the priestess, so impeccably preserved, raised more questions than answers. There were no signs of violence on her body, no fractures, no signs of illness, and yet, the way she had been placed there, isolated by layers of stone, metal, and warning symbols, indicated that this was no simple funeral tribute. Everything pointed to a deliberate confinement, calculated to prevent her from returning to the outside world. The question that loomed large was inevitable. What could have caused such an important figure to be condemned to spend eternity alone, in absolute silence? The inscriptions on the walls reinforced this sense of isolation. Unlike the external representations, which depicted scenes of prosperity and ritual, the visual language inside changed tone. There were kneeling figures, heads bowed, hands raised, not in worship, but in supplication. In the center, the same woman appeared surrounded by lines resembling streams of light, while spirals, Atlantean symbols for cycles, were interrupted, as if something had disrupted the natural order. Experienced archaeologists have noted that interrupted spirals were extremely rare in ancient iconography, and when they did appear, they were always associated with concepts of rupture, danger, and prohibition. The more attentive also noticed hidden mechanisms in the tomb's outer walls. Small channels and sealed compartments suggested that, when it was sealed, liquids or gases had been released to create a controlled environment capable of keeping the body in perfect condition. This indicated that the preservation technology was not merely symbolic, it was functional, a procedure calculated to maintain the woman's physical integrity for an indefinite period. But why? Preserved to protect or to contain? Among scholars, conflicting hypotheses began to emerge. Some believed she might have been the victim of a political coup, removed for defying the authority of rival leaders. Others, more inclined toward mystical traditions, argued that she had attained a state of consciousness beyond death, something that made her dangerous should she return. According to certain legends, there were priestesses capable of guarding their own souls and remaining dormant until certain conditions were met. For these theorists, the tomb was not a tomb. It was a prison of time. But there was an even more disturbing hypothesis, whispered in the makeshift corridors of the research team. What if the priestess wasn't dead? What if her impeccable preservation was precisely the indication that she remained in a suspended state, awaiting a specific moment to awaken? The marks under her skin, the objects she held, and the warning symbols could be both a warning and an instruction. One archaeologist, who asked to remain anonymous, even said, "Maybe they didn't want to hide her from us. Maybe they wanted to protect us from her." Around the priestess's body, archaeologists found an impressive array of carefully arranged artifacts, as if each had a specific purpose within the sacred ritual. There were small, translucent glass vials, sealed with gold caps, containing liquids that glowed in the lantern light, hues of gold, red, and even an almost electric blue. None of them had been identified by specialized laboratories, which only deepened the mystery surrounding their origin and composition. Some experts have suggested they could be advanced chemical compounds, perhaps medicines or elixirs used in rituals to prolong life or cure incurable diseases. Between these jars lay a delicately rolled parchment, wrapped in a thin layer of treated leather, resistant to moisture and weather. When carefully unrolled, it revealed inscriptions that did not correspond to any known language, but which, when analyzed with modern decoding techniques, appeared to form a complex symbolic system, combining astronomical figures with numerical formulas and geometric diagrams. The contents indicated rituals and procedures that, according to the initial interpretation, suggested the manipulation of natural forces, cycles of energy and life, to achieve something beyond ordinary existence. Also notable was a translucent crystal, perfectly cut and suspended on a small golden base. It was placed on the priestess's chest and, apparently, served as a kind of catalyst or energy focus. Initial tests showed that the crystal responded to certain magnetic fields, emitting a faint pulse of light when exposed to specific waves. Some researchers even speculated that the crystal served not only a symbolic, but also a practical function, perhaps a technological component far too advanced for its time. The objects, taken together, began to paint a surprising picture. The priestess was not just a spiritual leader, but a scientist or alchemist with a knowledge that inseparably combined spirituality and technology. The interpretation of the artifacts indicated that she mastered techniques that allowed her to slow the effects of aging and even reverse damage to the body, knowledge that, if true, could explain the perfect preservation of her remains. Most disturbing, however, were the warnings inscribed around the chamber and on the artifacts themselves. Coded phrases warned of the dangers of repeating the rituals and the risk of unpredictable consequences for those who dared seek immortality. It was as if the priestess, aware of the power she wielded, had left a legacy divided between the promise of eternal life and the warning that such power should never be used unprepared. This duality between revolutionary knowledge and fear of the consequences created an even deeper aura around the tomb. Researchers, who already considered themselves poised for great discoveries, began to view the site with a mixture of reverence and caution. After all, they were not standing before a simple tomb, but a sanctuary of ancient knowledge that defied everything modern science believed possible. Scientific analysis of the remains began to reveal secrets that went far beyond initial expectations. Under advanced microscopes, the priestess's tissue exhibited unusual characteristics. Cells that, despite millennia of age, seemed to retain a surprising vitality, as if an internal mechanism slowed the natural process of decomposition. Biochemical tests indicated the presence of rare organic compounds, uncatalogued in any known database. Substances that, in theory, could be responsible for preserving cellular integrity at levels not yet understood by modern medicine. But most intriguing was the blood, preserved in minute quantities within the veins still visible in her wrists. The samples contained microscopic metallic particles, which appeared to act as biological catalysts, protecting the organism from degradation caused by time. The researchers were perplexed. It was as if, within the woman's body, there existed a veritable active molecular factory, maintained by unknown processes that prevented aging and death. As this data was disseminated among the team, tension grew. Some scientists began to question whether they were dealing with a natural phenomenon or something artificially manipulated. After all, the substances found not only slowed decomposition, but also suggested a form of continuous regeneration. The hypothesis that the priestess had achieved biological immortality ceased to be mere speculation and began to be considered a concrete possibility. This scenario sparked an intense internal debate. Was this the result of a spiritual ritual, a lost technology, or a combination of both? The previously discovered coded inscriptions, when reinterpreted in this new light, seemed to describe complex biochemical processes that transformed the body into a living temple, capable of self-repair. What had previously sounded like mysticism now gained scientific backing. However, along with these discoveries came disturbing questions. If the priestess had managed to cheat death, why had she chosen to be imprisoned? Who had ordered this confinement? And most importantly, what was the price of such great power? As the days passed, the atmosphere around the tomb grew denser, as if the place itself were responding to the revelations, urging researchers to proceed with caution. The mystery grew deeper. One archaeologist commented, "It's as if we're facing a secret guarded not only by stone and time, but by an invisible force we don't yet understand." Meanwhile, the equipment began to pick up faint electromagnetic signals, pulsing in irregular rhythms inside the tomb, a kind of beating that none of the usual devices could explain. Each new discovery raised more questions than answers, and the general feeling was that this was just the beginning of something much larger. The Priestess of Atlantis, imprisoned for millennia, might not just be a preserved body, but the key to ancient knowledge that could transform our understanding of life and death forever. When experts finally managed to decipher the complex series of inscriptions found in the priestess's tomb and on the objects surrounding it, the magnitude of the discovery became clear. The messages revealed more than mere ritual instructions. They were a veritable manual, encoded in symbols and formulas, for an ancient ritual that promised immortality. The inscriptions detailed precise steps, from spiritual preparation to the use of mysterious substances extracted from rare minerals and plants, which, combined, supposedly reversed the natural aging process and allowed the soul to remain attached to the body indefinitely. The text explained that this ritual was not intended for everyone. Only those deemed worthy and prepared could undergo it, a passage guarded by sacred oaths and stern warnings. The priestess found in the tomb was the last bearer of this secret, charged with protecting it and preventing its irresponsible use. She had sacrificed herself to ensure that this power would not be corrupted or used for selfish ends. However, the most shocking revelation was the final section of the inscriptions, an explicit warning against repeating the ritual. The text asserted that the process of immortality was not only a blessing, but also a curse. Those who attempted to force eternity without the necessary spiritual balance would suffer dire consequences: the loss of humanity, the imprisonment of the soul in an eternal limbo, or even the complete destruction of the being. It was a solemn warning, engraved as a last resort to prevent the abuse of this forbidden knowledge. This warning cast a shadow over the entire find. The priestess's tomb and imprisonment took on new meaning. She was preserved not only to showcase an extraordinary feat, but to serve as a grim reminder of the price of human arrogance in the face of life's mysteries. Her sacrifice was a shield, a barrier between humanity and the hidden dangers of a power we perhaps should not attempt to control. In the silence of the chamber, the archaeologists felt the weight of this responsibility. This discovery was not a treasure to be exploited greedily, but a legacy to be understood with respect and caution. The mystery of immortality, so desired and feared, seemed closer than ever, but also more distant, guarded by a priestess who renounced everything to maintain balance. As the lantern lights reflected off the symbol-covered walls, one question lingered in the air, echoing in everyone's mind. Will we be prepared for what this secret might awaken? News of the discovery spread quickly, sparking a wave of reactions ranging from scientific enthusiasm to almost religious fear. Academic institutions around the world debated intensely the legitimacy of the evidence presented, and most importantly, the ethics of disclosing or concealing such secrets. Some researchers argued that the knowledge found in the tomb could revolutionize medicine, prolonging lives and curing diseases considered incurable until today. Others warned of the incalculable risks of interfering with natural processes, pointing out that immortality could bring unpredictable social, spiritual, and even environmental consequences. Among the expedition's leaders, the controversy was even more palpable. In closed meetings, they discussed the responsibilities and dangers involved in opening a modern-day Pandora's box. How could this knowledge be guaranteed not to fall into the wrong hands? And if it were used irresponsibly, what would be the consequences for humanity? Some advocated the creation of an international council to oversee the research, while others believed the secret should remain sealed as a safeguard against human ambition. Beyond the academic debate, religious and spiritual interest groups emerged that interpreted the discovery as a divine sign, proof that ancient civilizations possessed transcendental knowledge that modern humanity had forgotten. For them, the imprisoned priestess was a symbol of balance between body and soul, and her sacrifice a reminder that certain powers should not be awakened without wisdom and respect. Meanwhile, the tomb continued to be monitored, and equipment detected unexplained energy variations at the site. Some team members reported sensing strange presences and difficult-to-explain phenomena, fueling stories that spread among researchers that the priestess might still be alive in some form, protecting her secret even after millennia. The possibility that this discovery could forever alter our understanding of life and death provoked a mixture of fascination and apprehension. It was as if humanity stood at a crossroads, where the choice between seeking immortality or respecting natural limits would define its future. The Priestess of Atlantis, trapped in her sacred tomb, had become more than an archaeological symbol. She represented the eternal dilemma between the desire to transcend and the fear of the consequences of that transcendence. Ultimately, the question that permeated all discussions was clear. How far are we willing to go in search of eternity? And what price are we willing to pay for it? As the tomb of the Priestess of Atlantis lies silent beneath the deep waters, its secret continues to echo through time, challenging our understanding of life, death, and what may lie beyond them. The discovery confronts us with a disconcerting truth. Perhaps immortality is not just a dream or a fantasy, but an ancient knowledge long hidden to protect humanity from itself. As we reflect on the sacrifice of that woman, confined not by chance, but by choice, or perhaps by duty, we are led to question what it truly means to live forever. Is this the promise of a glorious future, or an unbearable burden that threatens to erase the essence of what makes us human? The tomb, with its inscriptions and artifacts, offers no easy answers. Instead, it presents a silent invitation to caution and humility in the face of mysteries beyond our grasp. What remains for us, then, is to recognize that there are limits we perhaps shouldn't cross, secrets we aren't prepared to fully uncover. The priestess imprisoned in her sacred tomb is a timeless reminder that true power carries with it responsibility, and that the pursuit of eternity can exact a price beyond our comprehension. As the ocean waves continue to caress the stones of that forgotten chamber, the question remains: when, or if, humanity will be ready to face the enigmas hidden beneath the waters? And more importantly, do we truly desire to unravel all the secrets of the past, when some truths may be too dangerous to emerge from the darkness? The mystery remains, shrouded in ancient shadows and lights. And perhaps, in the deep silence of the tomb, the priestess still waits, not only to be discovered, but for humanity to find the wisdom necessary to understand what immortality truly means.